Okay. Well, this morning or good morning or good afternoon, depending on the place. We are very happy to have this session finally in 2025. We started in 2022, and now we are in the year of Nicaea. Today we have three speakers. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to the first one, Christophe Guignard. He works at Strasbourg University. He has his habilitation in ancient Christian literature, and his topic are Hilary on the one hand, and he has wrote also about different topics, especially the genealogy of Jesus in some apocryphal texts. And then he recently published this book on the commentary on Matthew of Hilary of Poitiers and its relationship with Constance and all the polemic setting of the political and theological issues. And now he's going to speak about Hilary of Poitiers' first reception of the Creed of Nicaea. He will present a PowerPoint, and he has about 25-30 minutes, and after that we will have a discussion. So Christophe, welcome. Thank you for accepting this invitation, and the floor is yours. You are muted.
Thank you. Do you see my PowerPoint?
No,
yes. Okay. So now it should be okay.
Yeah.
It's an honor and a pleasure for me to speak at this seminar, and I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. My presentation today will essentially be a shorter version of the one I gave at the Nicaea conference in Strasbourg last month. It was organized by my colleague Michele Coutinho and other colleagues of my faculty. It was only after several years of episcopal ministry that Hilary of Poitiers discovered the Nicene Creed according to his own testimony. I have never heard the Nicene Creed except on the eve of my exile. Written in 358 or 9, these well-known lines attest to the limited diffusion of the Nicene Creed in the West until the 350s. There is no need to dwell on this here. It will be enough to note that this admission of ignorance is not the main point of Hilary's argument. Rather, he is emphasizing that even before he knew the Nicene Creed, he always shared its doctrine because basically it is biblical. Hilary's chronological indication is vague. His exile took place in the summer of 356. The previous year, at the Council of Milan, the Nicene Creed has been at the heart of a confrontation between the camp of Pope Liberius and the bishops close to Constantius II, mainly Valens of Mursa and Rosatius of Singidunum. Like many others, I am therefore inclined to consider that these events were not unrelated to Hilary's discovery of Nicaea, which must have taken place after the Council of Milan in the second half of 355. In this contribution, I would like to focus on a little studied page of Hilary that deals with Nicaea and its creed. It was probably written only a few months after his discovery of the creed. It is part of a historical fragment that can be attributed to the first redaction of the Adversus Valentum at Rosaceum, a redaction that, like many others, I date to the early 356. These pages contain historical indications about the Arians and their doctrine on Nicaea. It also includes a brief commentary on the Creed. I will focus mainly on this commentary, which constitutes the first testimony of Hilary's reception of the Nicene Creed. It will not be useless to summarize the chronology of Hilary's pre-exilic year as I reconstruct it, basing mainly of the results of my study in the book that Father Samuel showed at the beginning, Comme des brebis au milieu des loups. Early in the year 363, Hilary began writing his commentary on Matthew. In November of the same year, Constantius convened a council in R, which marked the beginning of a process of bringing the Western Church to heel. He secured the condemnation of Athanasius. Liberius' legates gave in, but Paulinus of Trier resisted. He was condemned to exile. Disappointed by the outcome of Arles, Liberius called for a new council, which met in Milan in 355. In this assembly, Eusebius of Vercelli proposed the adoption of the Nicene Creed, but Valens of Mursa strongly opposed this attempt. The incident probably caused a stir. In the spring of 356, Hilary was summoned at the Synod of Béziers. He was condemned to exile, but returned to Poitiers while awaiting confirmation of the sentence. Before leaving, he wrote the Adversus Valentum and Rosaceum and the last chapters of the commentary on Matthew, in this order, in my opinion. In the summer of 356, going into exile, he left for Phrygia. I will proceed in two steps. First, I will make some short remarks on the commentary on the Creed that we find in this fragment of Adversus Valentum and Rosaceum. Then I will place this commentary in its context in order to better appreciate Hilary's use of Nicaea. The section that interests us is found on pages 147 to 54 of the Feder edition of the Collectanea Antiariana Parisina in the Corpus Scriptorum Ecclesiasticorum Latinorum, volume 65. The commentary on the Creed is found at the end of this section. First, some general remarks. The first things that strikes the reader of the passages about Nicaea is Hilary's emphasis on the doctrinal perfection of its creed. He uses the adjective perfectus no less than 3 times. The commentary he gives is selective. As might be expected, he has retained the most decisive points in the confrontation with Arianism. Accordingly, he does not comment on every word of the Creed, but he follows its progression. It is thus easy to distinguish 7 parts after a brief introduction. Without going into the details of the analysis, I would highlight the most interesting result of the study of the structure. At first glance, one might get the impression that the homoousios is not particularly important to Hilary, since the term homoousios and the corresponding Latin formula unius substantiae appear only once in the whole commentary. A look at the structure, however, contradicts this impression, for it clearly shows the special importance of the fourth part of the commentary, which is precisely the part that explains the homoousios. Being the fourth of a total of 7, this part is the central one. It is also the longest, occupying almost a third of the central part of the text. Thus, far from being a secondary element, the homoousios appears as the focal point of the commentary. Beyond this specific formula, it is also important to note the significance of the term substantia. It appears a total of 3 times in the fourth part. The identity of substance between the Father and the Son, which is the conclusion of this part, therefore represents the culmination of the whole commentary and, by implication, of the Creed itself. In the body of the commentary, the fourth part is also the only one that refers to heresy, echoing the mention of heretics in the commentary's introduction. It is therefore in the assertion that the Son is of one substance with the Father that Hilary sees the most decisive contribution of Nicaea to the struggle against heretics. I will give a brief overview of the first 3 parts, limiting myself to one comment, namely that the first part articulates divine unity and the distinction of person. I will not read the text. The detail of the interpretation of these lines are debatable, but the general idea is clear. There is one God, but 2 persons, to quote John Fleming's commentary on Hilary's historical fragments. The articulation between unity and distinction is even emphasized by a chiasmus structure. It is interesting to note that despite the anti-Arian slant of the commentary, Hilary, even at this very early stage, does not lose sight of the Sabellian danger. Moreover, it is anything but impossible that he was aware of the accusations of Sabellianism leveled at the Nicene Creed by some Easterners, and that he was keen to respond to them from the outset by emphasizing the distinction between the persons. I turn now to part 4, that with the homoousios. It is only at this point that Hilary introduces the concepts of essentia and substantia. Similarly, the terms aeternitas and semper appear only in this part when he discusses the homoousios. I read the translation. Of one substance with the Father, which the Greeks call homoousios, is understood as follows. Only eternity is like eternity. What is always is in God. And so, in order to prevent any taint of heretical error from affecting the Lord Jesus Christ, one defines the reality of the essence that is in him. For essence derives its name from the fact that it is always. And since it has never needed any external support to sustain it, it is also called substance, because what is always subsists within itself and in the power of its own eternity. And then Hilary quotes 4 verses of John and continues, the substance of eternity equal in both, that is, in the unbegotten God and in the begotten God, which is one and the same in both, has its fullness. Once again, I will limit myself to brief comments. Firstly, the importance of the concept of eternity. It is essential in explaining the formula unius substantiae. Only eternity is like eternity. At first glance, this explanation is surprising, but it makes sense in the light of a principle established in the third part of the commentary, namely, those who are born have no other form or power than that of their origin. Hilary applies this principle to property of the divine substance, namely eternity. If the Father is eternal, the Son is also eternal, and thus, if he is eternal, he is God. The notion of eternity is thus central. It is therefore not surprising that Part 4 ends with the assertion of a single and same substantia aeternitatis common to the Father and the Son. Secondly, Hilary did some research, as he is able to give definitions of essentia and substantia. Doignon quotes Seneca or Chalcidius as his source, but their definitions link essentia only to esse, not to esse semper, as Hilary does. He must therefore depend on another source, which ultimately goes back to a Greek definition, as it supposes a play of word in Greek between ousia and ousa ae, always being. Thirdly, although this is not explicit, it is clear that Hilary felt the need to justify the use of non-biblical vocabulary. The attacks on the concept of ousia would become particularly clear in the following years, especially with the Second Creed of Sirmium, but Hilary's attitude suggests that he was already aware of such objections. Fourthly, the rapid explanation of the formula unius substantiae at the beginning of Part 4 is noteworthy in that it introduces the notion of similarity. Indeed, when Hilary states that only eternity is like eternity, he anticipates the debate with the Homoousians, in which he will engage in the De Synodis. In fact, when he asserts in this work that the homoousios is insufficient and that similarity can be deceptive if it does not proceed from unity of nature, he makes an observation very similar to that in our passage. Using the example of gilded objects, nothing can be like gold except gold. Thus, even before encountering the Homoousian views, Hilary already linked the notions of unity and similarity of nature or substance. It is this pre-existing conviction that must have made Hilary receptive to the ideas of the Homoousians and not the influence of the Homoousians that led him to see things in this way. Before concluding, I would like to return briefly to the context of this commentary and more generally the pages of on Nicaea, because it sheds light on the status and usefulness of the creed in Hilary's eyes. Hilary does not explain Nicaea for Nicaea's sake. He obviously has a very positive view of the creed he grants it eminent authority. But just as this affirmation of the perfect faith was made necessary by the Arian heresy, its revival 30 years later was a response to the urgent need to combat what Hilary saw as a resurgence of the same heresy. This resurgence is embodied in his eyes by another creed, which he considers as crypto-Arian. He quotes extracts from this creed, but they do not precisely correspond to any known creed. Following Peter Smulders, I consider that the creed in question is the one that was included in the imperial edict submitted to the bishops for signature at the Council of Arles and of Milan. Only these texts could have been so topical in 356. To understand Hilary polemics against this creed, one must understand where its heretical character lies. Hilary describes it as deceptive, heretical, and under its pleasant words, full of hidden poison. In other words, the reader who is committed to the full divinity of the Son will find no cause of scandal. There is no explicit heretical statement. Some of the phrases that Hilary quotes even echo those of Nicaea. For example, Deum ex Deo, lumen ex lumine. However, it is precisely to highlight the real theological intention of the creed of the imperial edict that Hilary resorts to that of Nicaea. The Nicene Creed, when compared with that of the imperial edict, reveals the falsity of the latter's intention. Indeed, the one established at Nicaea is complete and perfect, having closed off all the passages by which the heretics are accustomed to sneak in. It finds a solid and unalterable articulation in the eternal unity between the Father and the Son. The other creed, on the other hand, uses a charming simplicity in affirming that this is what we believe. May God forbid that it should be so for anyone. The Nicene Creed acts as a revealer. Comparison with this text makes the heretical character of the Creed of Ars and Milan clear. According to Hilary, this creed would confess the Son as God from God only to deprive him of the substance of his Father's eternity and to make him a God created by his Father. If the faith defined at Nicaea is perfect, it is because it has been able to guard against any possibility of diverting its formulations to slip in an Arianizing meaning. In this light, the importance of the homoousios for Hilary becomes even clearer, and it is easier to understand why the use of the notion of essence was necessary to prevent any taint of the heretical error from affecting the Lord Jesus Christ. The creed of the edict, on the other hand, is open to an Arian interpretation because it lacks all these precautions. Hilary's interest in Nicaea is therefore closely linked to the attempt by Constantius and the bishops such as Valens and Rosatius, who supported or even inspired his religious policy, to have the Western episcopate accept in Arles and then in Milan not only the condemnation of Athanasius, but also at the same time a creed that apparently was consensual, but which was open to many interpretations. The fierce opposition of the Nicene Creed to the idea that the Son was not eternal, that he was created ex nihilo by God, had a very contemporary significance for Hilary, since this was precisely what he accused the Creed of the Edict of trying to introduce. The indirect expression of Arian doctrines that he diagnosed in it meant that, in order to combat them, they first had to be brought to light. For this purpose, the Nicene Creed was in his eyes a particularly effective weapon, as had been illustrated by the uproar caused by Eusebius of Vercelli at the Council of Milan. It was decisive against past or present heretics, and this was all the more natural since in Hilary's age there was a doctrinal continuity between the Arians of the 320s and the proponents of the creeds of the imperial edict. Therefore, when he reports that with the agreement of all, excommunication for heresy was decided against all Arians at Nicaea, he likely included adversaries in this number. To conclude, I will briefly summarize some of the lessons from this rapid examination of a fragment of the Adversus Valentem and Osatium. Firstly, there is an undeniable theological subtlety in Hilary's explanation of the Nicene Creed, which is also apparent in his commentary on Matthew. Hilary did not have to wait until his exile and to discover Eastern theology in order to understand the issues at stake in the debates about the divinity of the Son. Secondly, his commentary on the Nicene Creed, primarily directed against an Arian type of theology, does not forget the danger of Sabellianism. Thirdly, in Hilary's eyes, Nicaea is a perfect expression of faith, but this perfection is to be read in a particular sense. It is mainly manifested in the fact that the creed does not leave any escape for heretics, and particularly for Arians. From this point of view, the importance of the homoousios to Hilary must be emphasized precisely because the fathers of the council used specific non-biblical formulations in order to remain faithful to the biblical teaching and to avoid heresy. Nicaea and the homoousios are thus perfect as a weapon can be perfect, sharp, cutting, effective. There is no evidence that in Hilary's eyes, the creed could have a general use, for example, for the ordinary faithful. Neither does it seem to have played a decisive role in Hilary's theological reflection. Thus, this essentially polemical utility of Nicaea explains what would be otherwise a paradox not easily to explain. While making much of the homoousios, Hilary never really adopted the formula, which appears only a few times in only 2 books of the De Trinitate, a work, by the way, that does not even mention Nicaea. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much. it is very interesting to hear the commentary of Hilary on the Creed of Nicaea in a different setting, like the Gaul and the Western tradition. So now we have time for discussion. Maybe you can stop sharing the screen so that we can see each other, and those who wish can also put on their camera to see each other. So now we have time for discussion. Mhm. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Xavier, please. Xavier
Yes,
Morales.
I have a question about the use of similes in the fragment that you showed, Christophe. Um, because similes is not in the formula, and Hilary translates homoousion by unius substantiae. Then, do you think that similes could be a hint to the fact that Hilary is reading in Greek the formula? Would it be like a souvenir, a vague souvenir of the Greek homo in homoousios?
I must confess that I had not think of this possibility. It's interesting. As you know, it's debated how much Hilary knew of Greek at this stage, but I think he knew at least something. But I would rather think that he's dependent on at least one pro-Nicene source, uh, because there are elements of Greek origin in his commentary, mainly the definitions of essentia and substantia, which are undoubtedly of Greek origin. But I was struck by this definition and the fact that it anticipates on the debate of the following years. So I think he was a man who tried to be to know to have the best information available, and so he probably was in contact with some bishops who could provide him with not only with the text of the creed, but also with some explanation of theological reflections on it.
Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm. Uta, please.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I think Hilary and the Nicene Creed is a quite complex and not easy relationship. And you stated that he understood Nicaea as a perfect weapon, but on the other hand, he can also describe Nicaea as a typical short formula which needs more and longer explanations. So there is some ambiguity, I think, with Hilary and the Nicene Creed. And so how would you describe this? Because as you're told in his long work, De Trinitate, so how can he see, on the one hand, Nicaea as a perfect weapon in this topic, and on the other hand, in De Trinitate, well, he is referring anonymously to some Arianism, but he's not quoting Nicaea and not arguing with the Nicene Creed. So in a way, for me, this is then a contradiction. And the way how he presents the theology here in the fragment you showed us, especially the term which was just mentioned, similis, this would, of course, be a too weak expression from the Greek perspective, just to speak of similis, and this is should be a suitable Nicene Trinitarian term. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it is obviously that there is something ambiguous, and I have more studied the early Hilarius, and I think that when he finally gets a copy of the Nicene Creed, he, contrary to what some scholars think, he has already a lot of personal reflection on how to fight against the 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 tendency of violence and others, which he sees as totally Aryan, crypto-Aryans, but really Aryans. And he, in the commentary on Matthew, he tries different approaches. At one point, he uses Sardica, and then at the end, he uses Nicaea. But in the commentary on Matthew, it is very significant that he uses very he uses not so much the creed, then it's anathemas. Yeah, anathemas are very useful to him. He has other ways to formulate the same doctrine as the creed. I think that he's sincere that he says that it is perfect, but Nicaea has told things in a way that was not his way. So it's more useful as a way to oppose his adversaries, the authority of big council, more than as the end of the theological reflection on the relationships between the Father and the Son, in my opinion.
Well, I will take advantage also to make a question. You did speak about early Hilary now, and then my question is about the how do you see the, so to say, stability of Hilary's doctrine and his opinions about Nicaea, homoousios, homoiousion, and so. I have the impression that between the Synodis and the Trinitate, there are some shifts. He has a more positive idea of the homoiousians in the Synodis, and then he changed. I don't know. But how do you see the development of Hilary's doctrine and attitude towards homoousios, Nicaea, and so?
Until I prepared this seminary and also the Strasbourg conference, I was thinking that all the debate with the similarity of essence was something that he discovered with the homoousians. But I was struck by the fact that there is some already in goal. He already has a reflection or perhaps sources that that led him to reflect on on the on homoousios unius substantiae as both the same one and the similar one. So he, in other words, I think that he wants not to choose between unity and similarity. He can only think of unity as similarity and of similarity as unity. And I would link it to his use in the commentary of Matthew on Matthew to his formula communio substantiae that is peculiar to Hilary, and that explains very well this tendency. Communio non unitas, because with unius substantiae, there could be the risk of the reduction to one, so Sabellian danger. Communio means two, because you mean two entities to have a communio. So I think there is a sensitivity to this aspect that is congenital to Hilary, and perhaps it's also complement to Utah's questions. There is also perhaps something that he does not like in Unius Substantiae, that it could go too much, or it could be understood in a Sabellian way, and he prefers formulas that that deal with this danger.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mark Del Coliano has a question. Please, Mark.
Hi. So first of all, thanks for your paper. So found it very helpful. So the Adversus Valentinum text that he wrote was issued in a number of installments, right? So that's our first book, which is 356, and then there's later installments of it, and so this fragment, this commentary on the Nicene Creed. So I'm assuming that's been generally recognized as belonging to that first book. I don't have my notes available to see if that's what other scholars say. And then my second question, or my real question is, so why do you think that he's writing that book at that time? And this is kind of tied to the long-standing scholarly debate over why he was exiled. Is it for theological reasons, or is it for some sort of political reasons? And so I'm curious to hear what your take on that is, and how that affects you. Your understanding of that first book of the Adversus Valentinum.
Yes, it's a tricky question that of the Collectanea and also the Jerome testimony. I'm in basically I follow the Wilmart line through Smulders and also Douagnon. I think that in order to prepare himself for Béziers, Hilary did collect material and prepare a dossier, and having been impeded to present it in Béziers, he wrote it down and published a book that is the classical Liber Primus of the Adversus Valentem and Osatium. And I think that there are many reasons to put it in this early date. Because Milan appears to be recent. And also it is used afterwards by Fabricius. And also I think that basically the theology of these fragments the last chapters of the commentary on Matthew with the same reference to Nicaea. And as for the second question, I think that the precise reasons of Hilary exile remain obscure, but I think that the theological motivation is clear. I would see Hilary as the new Paulinus of Trier in Gaul after the Council of Milan, as the leader of the opposition to the imperial policy. In my book, I try to show how one can recover allusions to and also instructions to other bishops to resist the imperial policy. And the hypothesis that I proposed is that like many political or religious opponents in many regimes, there was a difference between the real reason for which Hilary was sent in exile, that was religious, and the official accusation that was probably not from a religious nature. So in this way, I think we can put together the obviously religious motivation of the exile that Hilary himself highlights in a text that was ignored by many scholars in the Apologetica Responsa. He explicitly answers to the Deacon Hilarius of Rome that he was sent in exile for having protested against the condemnations of the exiles of Milan, and for having fought for the homoousios. And also the fact that when he writes to Constantius, he can anyway say that he was exiled for fake reasons.
Thank you. Let's see, because I have another question, but okay. Yeah, it's about you told us something about how Hilary developed the idea that the homoousios has a Sabellian risk, so to say. And then we know that by Socrates that precisely after the Council of Nicaea, there were some letters accusing those who support the homoousios of Sabellianism, and the adversaries were of the homoousios were accused of polytheism. We know also that Eusebius of Caesarea accused Eustathius for the same reason. And then my question is how did and for what reason, based on what Hilary started to think that the homoousios has this Sabellian risk?
Perhaps he would not say exactly so, but he seems to be very concerned, even before his exile, against the risk of Sabellianism, perhaps also because he has all the Latin background with the adversus praxias and so on. At least I think that he knows that this was an accusation against Nicaea, and that his personal sensitivity makes him particularly conscious of that risk. So he does not read Nicaea in that direction, but he anyway is cautious, and I think that he wants to prevent this risk, and perhaps also it is, in his opinion, a little weakness of the perfect faith of Nicaea to be eventually open to such an accusation.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we can give thanks again to Christophe for the presentation, also for the rich dialogue.